The claim I will be opposing today is many of mass media outlets concerning women objectify them, and such objectification influences violence and sexual assault against women. My opponent's secondary claims are: 1, mass media outlets objectify women, and that's the one I'm going to have a main focus on. 2, mass media has the potential to influence behavior against women in a negative way. And 3, given the results from the research, mass media outlets can influence behavior towards women negatively. Basically, number 2 and 3 go hand in hand because one is just a speculation, whereas the other is the results. My opponent, when giving his speech, gave a definition of objectification, which is the seeing and or treating of a person, usually a woman, as an object. But in the 50s, there was some objectification with women because the men held the majority of the power. Like, the media portrayed this in I Love Lucy, where Lucy was the typical housewife and Ricky was the typical working husband, went to work in a suit and tie every day and came home to a clean house and food on the table. But as the feminist movement came about, women started standing up for themselves and making their own decisions. This leads us to our first claim, which is mass media outlets objectify women. Feminist Ariel Levy states, Western women are wearing revealing clothing and engaging in lewd behavior, but these are forms of female self-objectification. The media does not have a part in this objectification. The women are choosing to dress and act this way for their own reasons. She also states that the culture today is becoming a raunch culture. Women see such behavior as a form of empowerment. This shows no sort of objectification or women acting as objects. They're choosing to act the way they are because they're feeling powerful and they're feeling like they have a voice in this culture. In his speech, he does an example of the Carl's Jr. commercial with Katie Upton. This does not show objectification. It shows a person willing to try to promote a fast food burger in ways that she feels comfortable. Now, Levy also states in her book, Female Chauvinist Pigs, Women and the Rise of Raunch Culture, which in that book she follows around the crew from Girls Gone Wild. She states, America's sexualized culture not only objectifies women, but it also encourages women to objectify themselves. So it's basically, the media is basically acting as a platform for women to feel empowered and do things in a way that makes them feel empowered and have a voice. So this claim, or these quotes, undermines the claim that mass media outlets objectify the women, because they're not the ones that are doing the objectification. When she interviewed a couple people from Girls Gone Wild, and they state that feminism is a triumph, and it proved that United States women are strong enough to express their sexuality publicly, which goes back to the fact that the media is more of a platform for women to portray themselves as being triumphant and strong. Which leads us to our second and third claims, media influencing negative behavior against women. And my opposer makes a quote that it is possible that the juxtaposition of media portrayals of aggression and sexual behavior could lead to conditioning and thereby increase sexual arousal to aggressive stimuli, possibly leading to conditioning and thereby increase sexual arousal to aggressive behavior. This just talks about and reiterates the fact of conditioning and these aggressive stimuli being conditioned into people. This is not necessarily relevant to his claim referring to media influencing negative behaviors towards women, because everyone is different and may not agree with what is being said from the get-go. So if people are like having negative influences, every individual has their own voice to say, and not let these actions be conditioned into them. Thank you.
All right, I like the way you started off talking about the secondary claims and emphasizing, for instance, the word potential in one of the arguments, suggesting that the advocate doesn't really have a substantive argument here, but it's a speculative one. The argument about what constitutes justification is an interesting one, since that, objectification, not justification. What defines objectification is an interesting one, since that is the basis of the advocate's claim. Your example of I Love Lucy, I don't know how well that one works, but I'll tell you what, the whole argument about feminism as a response to it seems to set up the basis of your answer on this argument. And that's the most interesting answer of all. I think that you basically kind of go around the premise and say that it's not the media that's producing this. It is in fact self-objectification, and the media is merely the platform for doing this. And I like the argument that comes up later that says that this is the way that women see themselves as being empowered. And your evidence on this point, I think, is pretty clear. I think we could use a little bit more contrast with the evidence that the advocate used on these particular points and how convincing it was. The only specific that I remember from the advocate's argument that you mentioned is the example of the commercial, for instance. And I don't remember if the advocate presented other instances where this objectification was widespread or that it created some kind of problem. On your last point, where you're basically making an argument that says people aren't necessarily going to be subjected to, or they don't have to accept this kind of brainwashing that's going on, I think that this is where your argument is probably the weakest. It would make a little bit more sense to suggest that there is no reason to believe that we're having this kind of consequence, and the easiest way to prove that would be some statistical information that shows how assaults against women have declined, how women have increased their ability to integrate into society at higher levels, and all the kinds of stuff that suggests that as we've gotten to this objectification standard, as the advocate's talking about it, we've had the exact opposite effect of what the advocate claims is going to happen. And in fact, women, are empowered, and the sexual, aggressiveness that people are worried about has become less and less tolerated, and it is prosecuted more and more, and it occurs less and less frequently. That seems to me like it would have been a stronger argument than the one that you make at the end. All right, thank you.